Video requested by a good friend of the channel, Lamont Ricks, would like to see the rise of Bob Backlund. This was a pain in the ass, man. But it's good. If you're a fan of Bob Backlund, you're going to dig this video. If you're not a fan of Bob Backlund, after this video, you might just become a fan and see exactly what the guy's done in a good 10-year period in the magazines. So let's jump right into it. Backlund would win the Rookie of the Year in 1976, but an unmentioned name for him in 1975 would be on the cover of Wrestling 75 Annual number 12. And here's Bob in the center here with Blackjack Mulligan. Why nerve holds must be banned. So Backlund's there getting the nerve hold squeezed on by Blackjack Mulligan. Neither wrestler is being named, so it would be easy to miss and hard to identify. There's Backlund front and center of his very first magazine cover in 1975. Backlund was on a lot in, say, 10 years, from 75 to 85. Early on, nothing much, some small photos like you'll see here. Next issue would be fall of 77, Wrestling Yearbook, and it has a special bonus section, report card on wrestlers, on wrestling's younger wrestlers. And it's got Flair in that category and also Tony Garea. I don't know why Tony Garea is in that category, because by 77, I believe he already held the WWF Tag Team Championships already twice, definitely once. So he's not really young to the business at that point. But anyway, Backlund's second cover. Third cover, he's not on the cover, but he is mentioned as Rookie of the Year at the bottom, Bob Backlund. And this is Victory Sports Wrestling Annual 1977, number 18. Bob would be mentioned on the bottom of this 76 annual. I guess I should have showed this one. Actually, no, because the yearbook, the annual, and the, actually two annuals, they were released in 77, but they are for 1976. So therefore, this is still in order. What was very hard for me to do, and I'm doing something completely different this time, is I have all of Backlund's title defense programs from Madison Square Garden. So, and he was featured on the magazine covers a lot from those matches. So I matched the magazine cover with the program. I don't know many people who could actually do that for you. And it took me all of 2.5 days, solid days, to put this material together. It doesn't look like much, but my wife is like, what the fuck are you doing down there? Trying to put this in order was a bitch, because the magazine don't come out, 4 months after the program. So it'll say January will be the match. The magazine won't have that cover until April, sometimes May. So it was confusing putting this in order. So bear with me if I'm off a month or two, but it'll all be in the same year, okay? So Wrestling World Annual 1976. It is announcing that Bob Backlund coming of age, and it's a great shot of him with the Missouri title after beating Harley Race in this magazine. So 76, he beat Race in the Kiel Auditorium. And here is, as some of you guys seen before, the program to that night, April 23rd, 1976. Terry Funk was defending the NWA title against Dick the Bruiser. And right here we have Harley Race as the Missouri champion, defending it against Bob Backlund. And here is the story to the build-up for that night of the match. And that'll also be his last run in Missouri. So Backlund beats Race to take the Missouri title. Race would go on to take the NWA title soon after that match. August of 1977, here is Inside Wrestling, Backlund and Race, the night Backlund won the Missouri title on the cover here. That is Harley here, August of 1977. A lot of people wouldn't make that connection because it doesn't have his name on here, meaning Harley Race. It's just somebody in an armbar. You would think it was the WWF, but it is Harley Race. Next issue, September 77. the night Bob Backlund mopped the floor with Harley Race. So here's the same match when Backlund won the title, and now they're mentioning the guys' names, also on the cover with Bruno and Baron von Raschke. I'll come back to that in a second. There's another matchup with Bruno and Baron that I want to tell you about it in a second. Wrestling Superstars, August of '77, Bob Backlund, A Day in a Life, and again, it is with Harley Race when he won the Missouri title. The coverage, I'm not sure if that coverage is in this issue from that match. I think it's more of just a behind the scenes look at Bob, but the other two issues do. April 25th, 1977, we have Bruno Sammartino's last match defending the title as world champion against Baron von Raschke, and this is also Bob Backlund's first Madison Square Garden appearance. So this is his very first Madison Square Garden cover and also his first appearance in the Garden, April '77. Here is Bruno defending the title for the last time against Baron on the cover of July '77, The Wrestler. Also, small corner black and white shot, Bob Backlund's wrestling's next living legend. And if you look closely, that is Harley Race once again when he won the Missouri title. So hopefully I'm pointing a few things out to you guys that you've never picked up on, never noticed, or never knew about. That's some pretty cool pictures there, classic shots that are just lost in the ravages of time that no one ever picks up on, and hopefully brought to light for any fans out there who wanted to see photos of that match or didn't know that match even took place. August 1977, Superstar Graham defends the title against Bruno Sammartino, and this is Backlund just on the cover. He's not on the card. I'm trying to think. Making sure Backlund wasn't on this card. Backlund was not on this card. He's just featured on the cover. Backlund now having a few matches in the WWF. And here is September 26th, 1977, and he'd have a match with High Chief Peter Maivia. This is a Madison Square Garden program. All the programs will be the Garden, unless I say different. Just so you know, they're all coming from the Garden. I think I've one from the Spectrum, though. This is an interesting issue. December '77, and Bob Backlund does it all. And here he is on the cover stretching... his name's escaped me, Billy Robinson, and he also is in here against Vern Gagne when he did a little tour through the AWA, and he come out and beat both men. They were saying Backlund isn't the scientific wrestler that everyone thinks he is, and he certainly proved himself in the AWA against Robinson and Gagne, as per the article in the issue. October '77, now even Bruno predicts Backlund will be the next WWF champion, and it's a small corner shot on the bottom. One of the last few corner shots we're going to see of Bob. March 1978, Backlund's 12 championship tests, and they have a list of people he needs to beat in order for him to be proven or to become a champion, and the list of people are inside. This is also Dusty Rhodes on the cover. There was one other issue with Dusty Rhodes. It's a real big close-up of Dusty's face, and he's wearing the 70s style cap, and it's a big smile on his face. And off to the side here, there's a black and white picture of Backlund. It just didn't do anything. It didn't move the video along, so I didn't bother showing it. But there was one other one before he was champion. But up until this point, everything is released so far with Backlund on the cover I've showed you. And I think this is one of his last covers before he wins the title. Wrestling Annual 1978. This is covering the Super Bowl of Wrestling with Graham and Race, also signed by Mil Mascaras, but on the top, Bob Backlund also signed. So all four champions on the cover signed on this rare issue. If the cops didn't stop me, I would have killed Bob Backlund, cries Freddie Blassie. Here we have Madison Square Garden, January 23rd. Backlund is involved in a six-man tag with Tony Gurria and Larry Zbyszko. Also, Graham defends the title for the last time before losing it. He defends it against Mil Mascaras. And Mascaris goes to the back locker and brings out Backlund to be in his corner. The fans pop when Bob comes out to be in his corner. January 23rd, 1978. There is one more issue before he wins it. April 1978, Inside Wrestling. What Bob Backlund can learn from Bruno Sammartino. And it's got Bob on the cover with Mr. Fuji. February 20th, 1978, Bob Backlund wins the Worldwide Wrestling Federation Championship against superstar Billy Graham. Here is the Madison Square Garden program. I also have Bob sign the cover of the program. Pretty sought after program. I see one not too long ago on eBay for 15 bucks. The guy didn't list it right, and it had some writing on it. And I mean, I should have just grabbed it, but I already have two. I was like, you know, I know it's cheap, but let somebody else get it. It's just a matter if they found it or not, because it's not listed under like programs or something. I found it by accident, but it was on there like a week or so ago. Here is the first issue announcing Backlund as the champion. Sorry about that. Bob Backlund wins the WWF title from Superstar, May 1978, and it's a real good close-up shot. The Japanese coverage of the title win with Backlund on the cover. Also got Killer Carl getting his head squeezed by Fritz von Erich. Let's look inside here. They give you, like I told you before, they would give their fans so much stuff in color. Check out this awesome poster for when Backlund won the belt. It's going to be hard to show it because it's so big and I have a small area, but it's like folded 4 times. I'm trying to do it without ripping it, but I know it's hard to get in there. But look at this poster that you get from the Japanese, man. Freaking awesome shot of Backlund. I'm sorry about the glare, but I'm trying my best to give it to you. You get the idea, right? I mean, imagine having that as when you're 8 years old and you're hanging out on the wall, brand new champion, your first look. Awesome shot, awesome poster given to them inside the magazines. We can take a look at a couple photos if you want from the inside of it. There's Backlund at the end of the match, raising up his finger as number 1, squeezing Superstar in the bear hug. Fantastic shot, 2-page color shot of Graham before they locked up for the first time in the match. What a great looking picture that is, taking up 2 pages, wow. Just a couple more, but Backlund and Superstar again on a 2-page spread with Superstar getting pinned. And I believe there's a couple more, but yeah, Backlund at the end getting his arm raised and Backlund celebrating in the ring. There's a lot of great shots in here. It's just another shot, another poster they give you of Fritz von Erich squeezing the head. I cannot say enough about the Japanese issues. I mean, yes, it's not in English, so what? You get the idea. Their magazines are set up differently. In the beginning, they show all the color photos, everything, and then in the back of it, it goes to black and white, and it has the stories that go along with the article. So in the beginning, it's flooded with color, especially in the 60s and 70s when we just got basically newspaper type print in black and white. So Backlund wins the Worldwide Wrestling Federation Heavyweight Championship, and he is out the gate and running right off the bat. Just a few days later, filling Superstar Graham's commitment, signing the contract that Harley Race would get a shot at the WWF Championship. Superstar Graham had lost it, and Backlund must defend it. This took place in Jacksonville, Florida. His first title defense against the NWA champion, Harley Race. This is signed by both guys. It would go to a 1-hour draw. At the end, Backlund would walk over to shake Race's hand, and Race put his hand out and shook it. As Backlund turned his back to walk away, Race smashed the NWA title in the back of Backlund's head, stood over him, pointed his finger above him, and said, "This is the closest you'll ever get to the NWA title," and laughs and walks off. All that is in the article inside July 78 Sports Review Wrestling. March 20th, a week or so after the title win, Backlund is back at the Garden with the rematch against Superstar Graham. Here is the cover for that at the Garden. And making it on the cover of Inside Wrestling is the match between Graham and Backlund with a bloodied face, July 78, Inside Wrestling. July 78, Bob Backlund, Superstar Graham. Should Backlund resign as the WWF champion? And one would ask, why is that? It is because it was clear that Superstar Graham's leg or foot was over the ropes. Referee did not see that, and in the AWA and in the NWA, the title would have been given back. In the WWF, it doesn't work out that way. So they took a poll, and for you, the fans, to write in to see if he should be resigning as champion or not. October 78, the wrestler, the results are in. Would you like to see what the results were? Sure, why not? Here is the article and just a shot inside. And I'm too far away to read exactly word for word, but I'll paraphrase it. 9,143 fans voted yes, and only 117 voted no. Bob Backlund should actually hand in the title. So 9,143 said he should stay the champion, and it is in this issue. And apparently they were all legitimately voted and legitimately counted for. Bill Apter said that he all this stuff that was mailed in was all legitimate, all counted for. All the voting for Rookie of the Year, Wrestler of the Year, that was all legitimate counted votes by the fans. It wasn't by the magazines. Backlund will go to war on May 22nd for a series of matches with Ken Patera. Here is the Garden program for the match with Ken Patera, and the coverage of that match would be on June 1978, Inside Wrestling. Backlund and Patera, also Ricky Steamboat with the U.S. Heavyweight Championship. After a match in a series with Patera, Backlund would take on Superstar Billy Graham, now this time in a cage. Bob Backlund's first time in a cage, April 24th, 78. Here is the program from the Garden. Coverage of Bob Backlund's first cage match, a bloody war inside a steel cage. Bob Backlund, Superstar Graham, August 1978. Few magazines would pick up the coverage from that match. We have Wrestling Monthly picking that up in their special annual 1978 album issue. Superstar and Backlund on the cover. Also, the Japanese did a phenomenal job covering not only this match, but also the cage match they had at the Philly Spectrum is in here. This is Gong, June 1978's issue. Wrestling World also covering the match. I believe there's some color photos of that match in here, ringside photos of the steel cage match between Bob Backlund and Superstar Graham, annual 78. The 78 Wrestling World only put out 2 issues, and this was one of them. Great shot of Backlund now, the new champion, and one of his first shots, or probably I think the first shot of him with the belt around the waist. This one is also signed. I have all Bob's covers when he was the champion signed by him. I just thought those covers were awesome. And this was another one. Sports Review, 1978 annual with Backlund, new champion. Exclusive footage of him inside. Here's another match with Backlund and Superstar, August 12th. 1978 at the Philadelphia Spectrum, and they're slapping the face to Bob with Superstar still wearing the belt on the program. Let's just show you where people's hearts were, right? Bob was the champion at that point, though. Sports Review, October 1978. Backlund continuing his battles with Ken Patera. They would have a huge battle in 1980. This is an excellent issue. It doesn't, don't judge a magazine by its cover because it doesn't look like much. 1978's issue of Wrestling News has the best up-to-date history, up-to-date meaning till 1978, from the beginning in the 60s, of every champion to hold a belt in the WWF. All the world champions and also the tag team champions. And there's a photo with every champion with the belt inside. Great news, great history piece for anyone who likes the WWF history of the 70s and the 60s. I highly suggest you buy this. Don't pay $80 for it that I've seen it listed for. You'll find it for 10 or 12. It's just some people are crazy. But if you're our fans, search this out. You will not be disappointed. Backlund on the cover, October 78, with the championship belt, Andre the Giant in the back of Madison Square Garden. And its tagline, how this handshake may destroy wrestling. I didn't read the article, so I don't know why. Another great shot of Backlund coming to the ring. All-American boy, all-American look, bright blonde hair, blue-eyed, smiling face. That jacket and the belt just pops out awesome on the cover here of Backlund. Wanted a man to defeat Bob Backlund. November 79 Sports Review Annual. And also signed by Bob. The Graham brothers teaming up for the first time, coming to Madison Square Garden together. It's also the night the Lumberjacks would win the tag team titles against DiNucci and Dino Bravo. This is June 26, 1978, and Backlund defends the title against Spiros Arion. And here is the match. Sports Review, November 78, Backlund and Spirion. Backlund on the cover of the July 24th, 1978 Madison Square Garden cover, and it's him defending the title against George the Animal Steele. This is a fantastic, extremely expensive, not worth the money that they ask for this, from Japan, Pro Wrestling, I'm not sure if it was Gong or Pro Wrestling Monthly put this one out. I want to say Pro Wrestling Monthly. It is a 1978 championship photo album loaded with color of just, the size of the magazine and the width of the magazine, full color shot of all the wrestlers and all the champions at the time. It's no articles, it's just photos, and it is super thick, well over 100 pages in there. It's a great color photo album, and unfortunately, it's coming from Japan, so it is very expensive. Maybe some of my faithful followers out there at Pro Wrestling Mags can help me out with this one. I don't know who Backlund is wrestling on the cover of Wrestling Superstars, fall of 78. I'll try to zoom in. Someone said, is it Ted DiBiase? I said no. Someone said, is it Buck Robley? I said no. And someone asked if it was Terry Funk, and I said no. Don't know. I don't know when the photo was taken. I don't know where it's at. There's nothing inside it with him with the same wrestler. So some of my smarts out there can fill me in. Eric K, possibly. Bill Jammer, maybe. I don't know. Black Atheist Millionaire. Come on, guys, help me out. If you guys can figure out who that is, let me know. Bob is on the cover of WWF Wrestling Action Volume 1, Issue Number 3, and it is the painted cover of the WWF magazine with the championship belt. Never really cared for these magazines, never really cared for the painted artwork, but they're highly collectible. Bob would go to the land of the rising sun and challenge Antonio Inoki, title versus title. So this will be his second title versus title in less than a year for Backlund as champion, when he wrestled Antonio Inoki in New Japan for the NWF and WWF Heavyweight Championship. Antonio would take the first fall, and time limit would run out, and there would be no deciding winner. They were both friends at this point. Magazine cover says Backlund declares war after match. Nothing really inside about it saying anything like that, just the cover. Both men getting their hands raised together at the end of the match. This was not the issue that Inoki beat Backlund for. We will certainly cover that in depth in another year or so, a few issues away. Gong 1978 July issue, Backlund title versus title. Same match, different photo, different magazine, almost the same. Now both of their hands are being raised up high together. Different photo, obviously it's from the same match, just different coverage. 1978 summer yearbook, Bob Backlund versus Dusty Rhodes, the match the fans demand, and that will happen at some point. Took two there, sorry about that. Backlund defends the title in September 25th, 1978 at the Garden against Ivan Koloff. Here is the coverage of the match. January 1979, Backlund and Koloff. Ivan Koloff, I made Bob Backlund cry like a baby. I can believe it. He did a lot of crying on TV, didn't he? Bob Backlund, Sports Review, 1979, February, and it's continuing his match with Ivan Koloff, former champion versus current champion. November 20th, 1978, Backlund takes on High Chief Peter Maivia for the WWF title. And here is the coverage. They had a series of matches. They didn't get a lot of magazine coverage from it, but Inside Wrestling, April of 79, has a small corner shot of Bob. Again, for the return match, Maivia versus Backlund, December 18th, 1978. Also on the card, Harley Race is here, defending the NWA World title against Tony Gurria. Excuse me. Backlund, Backlund defends the title against Maivia for the third time, January 22nd, 1979. This inside of a steel cage, and this issue is signed by Backlund. This is also Rowdy Roddy Piper's first appearance in Madison Square Garden. Great shot of Bob on the cover. Had both men sign this one, meaning Bruno Sammartino. I'm trying to find it. April 1979, The Wrestler, Bruno versus Backlund, the greatest match of all time, and both men have the belts. Both men signed. I just love this cover. I thought it was a great shot of both guys there. Monday, March 26th, 1979, Bob Backlund takes on Greg the Hammer Valentine. October 79, Backlund takes on Valentine. Coverage is in Sports Review Annual, and here the two guys are on the bottom. Up top, Ivan Putski battles Peter Maivia. Backlund and Valentine coverage continues with On Wrestling Today. Doesn't have a month, it just says 1979 on it, unfortunately. Maybe inside it has a month. Wrestling Reviews, a little late to the party with some coverage. Superstar Graham and Backlund. Backlund is the champ, and Superstar, they continue to have, arena matches throughout the country, and probably this is another one because I could tell Superstar's hair was cut shorter here, so this was well after he had lost it. Another matchup with Backlund and Antonio Inoki on the cover of February 1979 Gong Invitation to the Ring. The cover's not showing much. Inside coverage has some great bloody pictures of both Backlund and Inoki, and it's also featuring three of our world champions on the cover. Backlund would wrestle in his third title versus title against AWA champion Nick Bockwinkel, August 1979. The Wrestler, Bob Backlund, Nick Bockwinkel, the match that changed wrestling forever. That would be covered on a few different publications. Wrestling World would pick that up on the Annual 1979. I believe 79, there was only 2 issues of Wrestling World also. There may have been just one issue. One year they only had one. I know in the upper 70s and 80s, they were very slim pickings for Wrestling World. Also, Best of the Wrestler picking up that match with Backlund. Same story, the match that changed forever. This would be released in fall of 82. I just wanted to keep it together with the scheme so everything kind of flowed in some kind of a numerical order for you guys. Backlund goes to Detroit for his 4th title versus title, taking on the Sheik. Backlund would take on the Sheik. There's a couple of pretty good shots of the two men together here. Backlund getting the foreign object to the face. Here's both men coming into the ring. And here is bloodied up Sheik, and Backlund would win the United States Heavyweight Championship, Detroit version, NWA, from the Sheik. At this point, the Sheik's territory was extremely hit. They were on their last few days or so. Late 79, 1980 would be the end of the Sheik's territory in Detroit. He ran it from 65 until 80 or so. At this point, McMahon was sending some guys over there to help the Sheik out with some houses. He sent Superstar Graham there when he was champion, defended against Tony Gurria. He sent Gorilla Monsoon there. A few different guys were sent to the Sheik's territory to try to give him a little bit of a build-up. But it's all written in his book. I forget the name of the new Sheik book that came out. Incredible book. I don't have the book. I have the audio version because I like audio books because I'm always traveling, so I need to hear rather than sit and read. And man, I can't recommend that Sheik book enough. Excellent book. But the coverage of Backlund winning the Sheik's title is in November of 79, Gong separate volume with Dusty Rhodes and the Florida title. Our American magazines also covered it, but they don't mention anything about a title or anything. Backlund and the Sheik at the bottom here, on the bottom. And also Harley Race is just winning the title back from Dusty Rhodes for his third time. And this is signed by Harley. Great belt shot, great cover. Absolutely love this cover. Backlund now would go to war, and I mean war, against Pat Patterson. For the first and only time in history up until this point and beyond, there would be 4 consecutive sellouts at the Garden against Backlund and Patterson. The first meeting would take place July 2nd, 1979. This is the program for the match. Coverage of the match was covered not in very many magazines, at least the cover anyway. November of 79, The Wrestler, WWF in turmoil. Pat Patterson beats Bob Backlund. He didn't quite beat him, obviously. It was set up for a series of return bouts. The second return bout, July 30th, 1979. And if you notice, this is July 2nd, 1979, July 30th. That's 2 sellouts in the same month at the Garden. That would happen just a few times. They would have 2 shows consecutive in that month. The 30th, July 79, Backlund and Patterson, their second meeting at the Garden. Third match, August 27th, 1979, Backlund and Patterson for number 3. Coverage of that match would take place on the cover of January 1980 Inside Wrestling. Finally, the 4th and final meeting, Backlund taking on now the Intercontinental Heavyweight Champion Pat Patterson inside a steel cage at the Madison Square Garden, September 24th, 1979 for the titles. Great coverage is in Wrestling Wonders, 1979. Backlund in here with the championship belt at the end. Patterson now with your first look of him. He was never on a cover of a magazine with the Intercontinental Championship, but he is on this magazine, which was it was more than a fanzine, but it was, it was published, it was released, it was sold outside the Garden. It's also a program. It's a separate piece of paper on the back. All the matches are listed here on the bottom here. It was in publication for a while. You could send away, I don't know, $3, for 6 months of issues, and you get it every other issue. They are extremely expensive if you can find these. I have maybe a half a dozen of them. Some of them are well over $150, $200. It's just shocking, the price. Some people don't know what they are, and they throw it up there. You get lucky, you get them cheap. I have no idea where I got this. I've had it for so many years. It's just been in my collection for such a long time. The other one as well, when Inoki wins the title, I'll show you that one in a second. What a great cover. One of the few times the Rings put out a good cover. And it's because the Rings had just sold the company to the new owners, and this is their issue number 1. They're no longer going by the Ring, they're going by the Rings with an S. All that information is explained in the Wrestling Rings Wrestling News video, which would drive your mind absolutely crazy, how they did their format of laying out issues. Oh my God. But this was issue number 1. All 3 champions, Nick Bockwinkel, Bob Backlund, and Harley Race. Fantastic cover to end 1979. Wrestling Today has Backlund on the cover. What's unique about this, and I only have 2 of these, and if you can find some, I mean, I don't know where they come up with these prices, but it's ridiculous. They could charge you $200, $250. It depends on the magazine and what it is. Double cover. What it is they accidentally made a mistake and printed 2 covers on it. Like I said, it's extremely rare for that to happen. One is pristine mint, and the other one is just a little bit beat up from being the front cover. If you have any double covers, hang on to them. People spend money for them. People collect them. They're extremely rare, hard to get, and if you have them, you're going to be paying up for them. You might get lucky and have someone sell you one not realizing there's 2 covers there, but they are out there. Sports Review Annual 1979. This isn't the one I was talking about with Dusty. It has a yellow background and I think a blue up top when I said the small article with Backlund in the corner. This is another similar one, but not the one. That one was Inside Wrestling, what I was talking about. But Backlund winning the title is voted Match of the Year by you, the fans. In Madison Square Garden, June 4th, 1979. I thought I had something else here, but I guess not. Backlund takes on the winner of a 20-man battle royal, and thanks to one of the friends of the channel, they commented and told me that it was the Iron Sheik that won that battle royal. So thank you there for the info in one of our previous vids. October 22nd, Backlund would defend a modest match. I'm not sure how much this sold out, against Sweet Hansen. This is the program for the Garden. Whispers are starting to pop around of a title versus title once again for Race and Backlund in July 1979. Also releasing somewhere in 78, 79 was the Wrestling Photo Album number 4. And this is just a mix-up of past covers of magazines, all put onto one cover. These are highly sought after, extremely expensive for this particular issue, and it's got the Bob Backlund with the championship on the cover of this Wrestling Album number 4. 1979 Summer Sports Review. Not sure who's on the cover with Bob. It's just a magazine that the 10 men Backlund fear the most. Things start to get a little interesting right around now. Backlund takes on Bobby Duncombe November 19th, 1979, which would also be David Von Erich's first appearance in the Garden. He would beat Bobby Duncombe. That info was covered on Inside Wrestling 1980, April 1980. In between the weeks of November and December, Backlund would go to Japan and defend the title against Inoki. This coverage is in an April 81 issue of Wrestling News. The Rings Wrestling, which Wrestling News and Rings Wrestling were the same magazine. Like I said, it's tricky. I explained that in the other video. Anyway, Antonio Inoki would win the World Wrestling Federation Heavyweight Championship. It's up for dispute because McMahon refused to acknowledge it, but it did happen. Antonio Inoki won it. Pictures and coverage is in other issues of Gong and Wrestling Monthly. This is a program with Antonio Inoki after winning the match with his hands raised up in the air. Excuse me. Wrestling Review would report it. Kind of small. I would think it would be bigger news, but you see on the bottom of the June 1980 issue Wrestling Review, top secret, exposed, Bob Backlund loses WWF title. Now, inside the magazine, it has Inoki. Try to hold this out so you can see it. Has Inoki with the, that's not the championship. That is a different belt. Inoki pins Bob Backlund for the WWF Championship. Title changes hands twice. At the time of this issue, Wrestling Review was going to the presses. We have learned that Bob Backlund had lost the WWF Championship to Japanese star Antonio Inoki. The circumstances surrounding this major upset are not completely clear yet. Apparently, Inoki pinned Bob Backlund for the title on Japanese soil. As awarded the championship belt. There was a rematch shortly after in which Backlund and Inoki both were counted outside the ring. What had happened was it was interference with the Tiger Jeet Singh, and Inoki and Backlund started battling back and forth with Tiger Jeet Singh. The article continues on. However, apparently, after the match, after the countout, Inoki handed the title back to the WWF officials. Everyone witnessed the match, was stunned, and didn't know what happened. Our view, Bob Backlund is no longer the real world champion, even though now he has the belt once again. Never before has such an impeccable event happened and taken place in the world of professional wrestling. WWF officials are silent about the occurrence. I'm trying to read this and not fall over the they won't even admit that this even happened. In other words, you, the fans, are not supposed to know that Bob Backlund was pinned in front of thousands of fans in Japan. However, we feel that you should be informed by this event. In the next couple of issues, we will have full photos of Antonio Inoki with the WWF's championship belt around his waist, whether officials want to admit it or not. You learned it here. So on this issue is covering the title win with Antonio Inoki, pinning Bob Backlund. It was a clean pinfall in the center of the ring. I have the match on DVD. I just watched both of them. I watched the other one when it went to Tiger Jeet Singh, and it got... it's not in English, so you can't understand it, but he hands the belt back over to the officials, and that's true. Backlund kind of leaves with the belt, but not really. No one knew what was going on. Everyone was confused. Coverage of the Inoki is in this Wrestling Wonders. It also has him with the championship belt in this 81 issue of Wrestling Wonders, and it's a Bob Backlund, Antonio Inoki Battle of the Champions in this issue. Excuse me. Now, this issue, December 1979, is the next event at the Garden on the 17th. Backlund comes in to defend the title. The Americans are none the wiser of what went down. They don't know Inoki had lost the title or won the title and gave it back. So what I have is Backlund loses the WWF title in Japan, November 30th, 1979. The rematch, December 6th, 79, is when they vacated the belt due to interference in the count out of the ring. Backlund, the title was there vacated. And if you watch the match, I don't know if it's on their network or online, Backlund versus Inoki. Backlund comes to the ring. He's not announced as the world champion. He comes to the ring without the belt. The Japanese president of the WWF comes to the ring holding the belt and presents it to the referee. They hold it up in the air. The announcers say Backlund, the TV announcers rarely mention him as being champion. They just say, here's the champ, Bob Backlund. It's very downplayed. You need to read between the lines to see all the sneaky shit that's going on. But those things like that, of him coming to the ring without the belt, him not being announced by the ring announcer as the world champion, Bob Backlund, those are the telling tales. So some crazy shit happened there that they didn't want to admit and they didn't want to go down. All in the history of Bob Backlund's year and a half or so of being champion. So that match takes place December 17th, 1979. And if you watch that match, check it out. Those things I pointed out to you, that him not having the belt, him not being announced and such, it all adds up. McMahon, again, tries to rewrite history and doesn't want people to know. Excuse me. This is just a photo of Backlund and Ricky Steamboat together, both as champions. And my boy got this. He does a lot of shows, and he goes to a lot of shows, and he picked this up for me. This is the back cover of the first PWI, and I got that signed. So it's pretty cool. I actually didn't mean for that to be in here. Excuse me. January 1980, Bob Backlund. How much longer can Bob Backlund be champion? And here he is on the cover of his first PWI. January 21st, Backlund goes on to another series with Ken Patera, Kerry Von Erich's first match now. We just seen David, now we're seeing Kerry for the first time at the Garden. The match with Patera and Backlund from the program is covered in the fall 1980 issue with Ken Patera. Ken Patera would have been a good champion, I believe. Big, jacked up muscle guy, had a great look, could wrestle really well, obviously with the Olympic strongman, and definitely had the strength and the size. It would have been a great champion somewhere. Although he did get the Intercontinental title for a short time. Tommy Rich and Austin Idol's first appearance in the Garden, Monday, February 18th, 1980, and it is the rematch, Ken Patera and Bob Backlund. Patera says he'll destroy Backlund tonight at the Garden. June 1980 is The Wrestler, covering the Patera and Backlund feud of the rematch. For the trifecta, Backlund takes on Ken Patera once again, May 22nd, 1980. Backlund never wrestled Hulk Hogan at the Garden, which is really surprising. I thought for sure something like that would have went down. I believe Boston Garden once and the Philly Spectrum twice were the big houses that I knew of. Here is May 10th, 1980, Hogan and Backlund's first appearance together, wrestling together, program from the Spectrum Philly. And here is Inside Wrestling's coverage of Backlund and Hogan. This is also signed by Hogan and Backlund, two WWF heavyweight champions. What a great looking cover. Always loved that shot of Hogan there. Back when I had a little more respect for Hogan when he was a heel. I kind of liked him when he was a heel. Great shot of Backlund on the cover of February 1980 Best of the Wrestler. On the cover of Gong, July 1980, all three champions, Bockwinkel, Race, and Backlund, and they're just showcasing our champions. Great looking shot of Bob with that kind of light purplish color championship belt. It didn't stay around for very long, that color. Summer of 1980 against Tanaka. Monday, October 20th, 1980, Madison Square Garden program, Bob Backlund versus Sergeant Slaughter. And here is the coverage. Backlund and Slaughter caught red-handed, Backlund's title being saved by illegal interference. Arnold Skolin coming in with the chair shot. Who knew Arnold Skolin could be hardcore? Wrestling Review, October 80, Backlund versus San Martino. Just a cash grab issue. Nothing really going on with this issue of Wrestling Review. Wrestling Review was hurting at this point. They're about to be sold once again in 1980 to another company before it finally went under for good in 83. Inside Wrestling has the coverage of Backlund winning the tag team championships with Pedro Morales at the Shea Stadium in 1980, beating the Samoans. Problem was, Backlund was already the WWF champion and couldn't hold two belts at once, according to the made-up rule by the WWF. Only other person to do that was Bruno Sammartino when he won the United States Tag Team Championship, WWF version in the 60s in Atlantic City, New Jersey. I forget who his partner was. He beat Captain Lou Albano and somebody else. Actually, it's all in that magazine I showed you with the wrestling news. Anyway, Inside Wrestling, December 1980s. This is autographed by Mascaris and Koloff, two world champions, and actually four world champions on the cover here. It's just not signed by Pedro. But there's your only look at Backlund with the tag team belt. Match is set. Bob Backlund. This issue is huge. It's going to be hard to fit with the glare. I love the shot of Race and Backlund together. One of my favorite shots that hangs in my room. Sorry about the glare, guys. Can't beat it here. But on this cover of Pro Wrestling Weekly newspaper, it's a full-color newspaper magazine. It's huge. On the back, you get an awesome shot of Inoki versus a bloody Dusty Rhodes in Japan. Just a great color shot of that newspaper. The match would take place at Madison Square Garden, September 22nd, 1980. Title versus title. Backlund meets Race. A lot of people say it's boring. A lot of people say it was nothing. I enjoyed it. I like it. I like both guys. I love Harley Race. I'll never forget when he came to WWF TV and he was on my TV station, the NWA World Champion, and just being in shock, like, oh my God, here's the NWA Real World Champion on our television. What the hell's going on here? You never seen anything like it. They never mentioned the NWA before. They don't talk about other companies. And here's the champion taking on whoever in a squash match. Backlund comes out to greet him. They shake hands and they square off and they get eye to eye, trying to get the build up for the Garden. You knew it was going to be something special. Other than that, there wasn't a whole lot of coverage or talk about it. But title versus title, Backlund once again battling it out. The guy's had some battles up to this point. You could look at the line of people he's already taken on, and the 80s were not going to get any easier for him. Stepping out of the gate with Race as the first day as champion of his first defense, and now taking him on again in the Garden. Here's full coverage of that match inside this huge Japanese color photo book album. Awesome. This is a USA Part 2. You've seen the Part 1 that I held out earlier. This is another one. It's no articles, all photos, and it's got a good coverage of the match of Race and Backlund. The Japanese issues ate it up. They were on all their covers. Excellent coverage of that Garden match with Race and Backlund inside Gong. Trying to get the date. There's no date. This is volume 12. This is November's issue of 1980. I had to decode it because they write in Japanese characters. Okay, yeah, November of 80 also put out for Wrestling Monthly. So that was Gong. This is Wrestling Monthly's cover. Awesome cover, man. Backlund coming down to hammer a smashed up Harley, and on his knees coming down to give him that shot. And the photographer's got his arms and elbows resting on the bottom of the ring and just taking that photo right there. Just a fantastic in-action shot there. Inside Wrestling, 1981, January's issue would cover Backlund. Bob Backlund did the WWF trick Harley Race, and those two on the cover of the abdominal stretch. The Rings Wrestling, also Wrestling News at this point, also covering this issue, Battle of the Champions, Race versus Backlund, and you get two shots of the bloodied battle here. Backlund, Madison Square Garden program, he would take on Larry Zbyszko. November 80s issue of Backlund on the cover with Zbyszko. He'd be on a couple small photos of a PWI, Backlund, never really that much. And then after 83, I don't think we see him anymore on PWI. This is a Rings issue, which just transferred from the sale. Wrestling Review would have had this, but now it's Rings. They're under the same umbrella at this point. April of 1980 with Backlund and Bruno. Antonio Inoki on the cover of the Madison Square Garden program for December 29th, 1980, and Backlund is defending the title against Killer Khan. Coverage of the Killer Khan match, May of 1981, of The Wrestler, Dick Murdoch versus Dusty Rhodes in the corner. The war of Dusty and Dick continue. A match happens secretly, not so secretly because it made the cover of PWI. Backlund defends the title against Dusty Rhodes in Japan, and the coverage of that match is in December of 1980's issue. Pro Wrestling Monthly's July issue 1980 has all the color photos and coverage of Backlund defending the title against Dusty. Inoki back on another cover of Madison Square Garden dressed in full samurai garb. And February 16th, 1981, Backlund will take on Stan the Lariat Hansen. And that would be a bloody war. The Wrestler, July 81, Backlund taking on Stan the Man Hansen. Stan the Man Hansen, Stan the Lariat Hansen, goes by both names on the cover of Pro Wrestling Monthly, April 1981, and there's a great shot outside the ring, Backlund getting hit with blood over the eye. Good bloody pictures inside this issue of Pro Wrestling Monthly if you're a fan of that match. Very close to this issue here of June 81. You see the blood pouring down Backlund's face. There's some great color shots of that in the Japanese issues there. June of 81, Inside Wrestling. You get a small little corner shot, but I guess it's better than nothing. The men would battle several times. They'd be back at it April in a cage. Stan the Man versus Backlund at the Garden, April 6th, 1981. Backlund would come out victorious. All the coverage is in this Japanese wrestling newspaper. This is huge. Again, trying to fit it all. On the back, it has the coverage of the match, Backlund and Stan. Sorry about this, guys. I know it's terrible, but you're trying to... Backlund in the abdominal stretch against Stan. The cover is the money shot with the belt at the end, though. Great looking shot of Backlund with the title. Backlund on the cover of Winter 1981 of Wrestling Superstars. All three world champions being featured now as Dusty would capture the title for a short time. Back to the Garden, May 4th, 1980. Backlund would take on the Canadian champion at the time, Angelo Mosca, King Kong Mosca. And September 81's coverage of the match on Sports Review, Backlund and Mosca. They would be back for a rematch, June 8th, 1981. This is the program for the return bout with Pat Patterson as the guest referee at the Garden. Backlund would have a title defense now and a short war with the Magnificent Morocco, August 24th, 1980. Coverage of that August 4th match would be in January 82's issue of Sports Review. Bob and Backlund and Morocco on the cover. Return bout in a Texas death match, September 21st, 1980 at the Garden. And coverage of that would be covered in Wrestling World, 1982's issue, which is an annual. Small corner shot on PWI, February 82, as Flair with the bloodied face and world champion, and Backlund and Morocco. The price of being champion is blood. That's Ric Flair's tagline. How Bob Backlund's title was saved by the referees. Wrestling Superstars 81, featuring some of the world champions of past and present. Backlund on the cover with the belt once again. Madison Square Garden, October 19th, 1981. Backlund takes on Greg the Hammer Valentine in a very controversial match. Greg Valentine with the World Wrestling Federation Championship belt on Inside Wrestling, February 1982. And if you look at this issue, you would think, and you're from another territory, and you grab this off the newsstands, you think Bob Backlund lost the belt. What happened was Backlund pinned Valentine in the ring. They both had black trunks on. They both had sweaty blonde hair. Referee raised the hand of Valentine by mistake and gave Valentine the belt after Backlund clearly pinned him. So the title was held up for a month to have a rematch to decide who the champion was. And this issue was signed by Valentine up top and Backlund on the bottom. Always loved this issue. Great looking issue. There's another program to the back. I guess I have two of these programs. Rematch with Backlund and Valentine, November 23rd, 1981. It would be a Texas death match for the title, Backlund and Valentine. The coverage of that Texas death, March of 82, Inside Wrestling, Backlund Valentine Texas death match. The WWF title is back where it belongs. And you see a shot of Backlund jumping down, catching the leg. Main Event Wrestling also covered the war between Backlund and Valentine, June 1982's issue. PWI 1982, Backlund, Hulk Hogan, that trophy belongs to me. What it was is Backlund makes another trip back to Japan. Every year, the Japanese would have the top American wrestler who came on tour in Japan of that year, and they would have a match between all, like a mini tournament, I guess you could call it. Hogan took on Backlund, and Backlund defeated Hogan in Japan and won the title, actually the trophy rather, and he is awarded the trophy. I don't know how long that went on for. I'm not sure how many more that they carried that out till, because I know the IWGP was about to come, so all that was about to change. The MSG tournament that they used to have was about to change also. But it was a stupid little gimmick for the American wrestlers to become, more known in Japan, rather, to be, showcased a little bit more in Japan. January 18th, 1982, this would be Jesse the Body Ventura's first match in the area. And now we have Adrian Adonis taking on Backlund. Adonis was awesome. I loved Adonis. He was a great wrestler for a big guy. He could really move. I can't say enough good about Adrian Adonis. That coverage was on May of 1982's issue of Inside Wrestling. I wish Adonis was on more covers. I wish he had won the tag team championships here. I know he got it with Jesse in the AWA, and but I mean that was, and I got it with Dick Murdoch a few years later. But I can't say enough about Adonis. I liked him a lot. Backlund defends against a return bout with Adonis once again on February 15th, 1982. March 1982, Backlund defends the title now against Adonis' tag team partner, Jesse the Body Ventura. So after just 2 months of being in the company, he gets his title shot, Jesse. And here's Jesse's first cover with Backlund on the cover of Wrestling World 1982 for his title shot against Backlund at the Garden. Also, a small corner shot on PWI May of 1982 with Backlund and Jesse. Bring on the War with Superfly Jimmy Snuka. Backlund now, April of 1982, April 26, 1982. He defends the title against the Superfly. Snuka and Backlund on the cover, June of 83's issue. It's also signed by Snuka at the bottom there, if you can see that, and Bob up top. Classic shot at the Garden. You can always tell the Garden with the clocks in the background and the score timer in the background. It's just such a nostalgic look. Whenever I see wrestling and I see that in the background, you always know it's the Garden. Great place to see wrestling. Backlund and Snuka would be covered October of 82. The Wrestler, and great shot of Backlund with Snuka in the armbar. They had some great matches, especially in the Philly Spectrum. They had some great matches. Return bout, Snuka taking on Backlund for the title, June 5th, 1982. There's the Madison Square Garden program. Wrestling Scene, picking up the great cover of Backlund and Snuka on the cover. I'm just looking for a date. August 1982. It's really small. It says August. There's no year on this. They're terrible for letting you know what the issues are. Wrestling Scene, Ringside, and All Stars. They all did the same. Small shot of PWI in September 82's issue, and it's got Snuka and Backlund here again. Can Bob Backlund recover from the heinous beating? And he is bloodied and beaten up. Here is the third match. Backlund meets Superfly in a steel cage match. June 28th, 1982. Program from the Garden. Grabbed the wrong issue. This is the issue for when Snuka wrestled Morocco in the cage, not Backlund. Sorry, guys, wrong issue. Anyway, there's not to say anything wrong with this issue. It's a great issue for Snuka versus Morocco in the cage when Snuka jumped off the top of the cage on Morocco. All that coverage is in this cover of Wrestling, Pro Wrestling Weekly, actually Pro Wrestling Monthly special. Backlund would be voted, what did he get? Wrestler of the Year on the cover of March of 83 PWI. And this is signed by Bob. Great shot of Bob with the title belt and the hands around the waist. Classic look with his towel around the neck and the jacket. It's a great looking cover with Bob on there. A small corner shot of Backlund and Blackjack Mulligan. I remember watching Mulligan and Backlund wrestled. Backlund was so small compared to Mulligan. It was, you see it in person. Mulligan was just enormous, man. This is August of 82, Inside Wrestling. I think that was the first time I ever seen Blackjack Mulligan. I seen him versus Andre too, and then Mulligan looked really small against Andre. September 82 Wrestling Review. It's got all three world champions at the time. August 30th, 1982, Tiger Mask takes on the Dynamite Kid for the Junior Heavyweight Championship. The Junior Championship, WWF Junior Championship. I guess it is Junior light heavyweight championship, junior heavyweight champ. I don't know. That's a stupid name. They should just call them light heavyweights. Backlund defends the title against Playboy Buddy Rose. Coming his way from the Pacific Northwest is Buddy to take on Backlund. And Sports Review, December 1982, has the coverage of Buddy Rose and Backlund. Around this time period, not exactly sure, the next and last wrestling photo album number 5 was released. Bob Backlund gets the award from the Police Athletic League, covered on the Rings Wrestling. I mean, it's nothing shocking or moving the world, but it's the kind of respectful guy Bob was. He was always in the community. He was always helping out kids and doing charities for kids. He was always getting awards. He was a role model as a champion. The guy respected the sport of professional wrestling. He didn't come out and make an asshole of himself. He wanted to be a role model for all kids to look up to. And how could you knock a champion like that? Especially for the asshole who replaced him. It's ridiculous. Bob catches a lot of shit for, being boring on the mic or boring in the ring, but the guy was a fighting champion. Look at the past people he just went up against. I mean, come on. The guy went through some wars, and he wrestled every single one of them. Hogan would punch you, kick you, drop a leg, flex his muscles, and go do another shot of juice. I mean, give me a break, Backlund catches too much shit, and the guy was a lot better than he's given credit for. And even the police think so, right? This is funny. I had this since I was a kid, right? And some asshole kid ripped out he didn't rip it out. He ripped it out. He ripped it out. Nick Bockwinkel's picture, and bent over a hand and made like a fuck you, and he wrote Dick Bockwinkel on it. And I was pissed at the time, and then I forgot about it when I was going through my issues a couple years ago, and then I was like, I got to put that on the cover. It's so funny. I don't know, the shit you do when you're in fourth grade, right? October 1982, that would put me at like 13 or so years old. Let's see, the Rings Wrestling with Backlund and the Strongbow brothers on the cover on a TV match when they did a 6-man with Fuji Saito and Albano, and then of course the Bockwinkel. It's funny. Backlund now would do his 5th title versus title, taking on Ric Flair, a very silent match, meaning there was hardly any buzz talked about it, at least up in the Northeast anyway, never a mention of it. This is also signed by Flair, Backlund, Snuka, and Putski. Wrestler, November 1982. Also covered from Championship Wrestling from Florida, both Flair and Backlund doing an interview on TV in Florida with the great Gordon Soley on the Gong Invitation to the Ring in 1982. Wrestling Scenes coverage of the match, which took place in the Omni, and I don't know, I guess I went to a draw of some sort. There was no winner, nobody took the title from anybody, and it never happened again. Wrestling Scene, I'm just looking for the date, December 1982. Real small on the bottom, it says DEC on it. No year, nothing. So if you didn't know, it's like a seller, you're trying to buy that, and a seller doesn't look in to see, they might not even list the year, so you got to look close. December 82, even the main event picks up on the match with Backlund and Flair. Wrestling Superstars picks up the match, also winter 1982. Bob Backlund, the All-American Boy Grows Up, also signed by Bob with a great patriotic look of Backlund and the American flag back in May 1982's issue. But the big news is the strange reappearance of superstar Billy Graham. Superstar Billy Graham would be back, and he'd be looking for a title shot, and this is the Garden, October 4th. He would get that shot against Superstar. November 1982, Backlund would be at it for the rematch. This is also my program. It's also my ticket stub, and the seats were Section J, row 3, seat 4, ringside, and the seat was $11. Regular general admission at the Garden, I think back then was $9. So the first 3 rows were considered ringside, and we got to see this matchup for $11. Go figure, huh? $11. And I'm sure if I asked my father, is that a lot of money then, Dad? My mom would say, yeah. My dad would say, no, hell no. April 83, Sports Review's coverage, Backlund versus Graham on the cover. And they'd be back again, once again, at the Garden for the 3 in a row for December 28th, 1982. Superstar Graham would get the last shot at Backlund, And the last shot was covered on the main event issue, January 83, and is also a color pinup of Superstar Graham on this issue. First time Graham is on a cover flexing since the late 70s. It's good to see Graham back, just not with that particular look I wasn't a fan of. Wrestling Review, January of 83, got Backlund in Buddy Rogers' corner, which was like a Piper's Pit or interview time halfway through the show. And the half-hour mark, they would have interview time, and Bob was featured as Buddy's guest on the cover. This is the Garden program. Morocco wins the title, the Intercontinental title tonight. What's the date? Oh, date's on the back, that's why I got it flipped. Saturday, January 22nd, 1983. And it's got Backlund taking on Big John Studd. If the program's changed for the last maybe 7 or 8 issues, and they've started putting the lineup sheets on the back of the program, which I liked, rather than have to flip open on the inside. What is this number? Number 60. They only went to 64, so only 4 more would be like this, and then they would change completely, and McMahon would have his own programs, that the Joe generic program that everyone got in every arena, rather than having one special program made up for that particular venue. June of 83, Backlund on the cover with John Studd. Now you'd start to see Backlund start to simmer down. The coverage is just starting to back off of him a little bit, not a little bit, a lot of bit, and his days are winding down as the champion in the World Wrestling Federation. Bob Backlund takes on Studd here in a corner shot of PWI Annual. Backlund takes on Morocco. The date's on the back. I think it's Valentine's Day, February. They call it Valentine's Massacre. It's February 18th. Valentine is the 14th. But anyway, Backlund takes on Morocco at the Garden on the 18th. And that's the cover of the program. Here's the inside match on the cover of Wrestling's Main Event, April 1983's issue. Also, Hogan and Inoki taking on tag teams, winning the tag team tournament, the MSG tournament it was called, in Japan. Not many magazines covered that. Wrestling Scene would, Ringside, and Main Event would, and Wrestling News also. Backlund back again for a Texas death match at the Garden, Sunday, March 20th, 1983. Also, it's got Andre versus Studd. Backlund coverage of Morocco match in summer 83 Annual. On the cover, Backlund, the clash of the WWF champions. Morocco is now the Intercontinental champion at this time, going for the heavyweight championship. That might be the end of the feuds. I'm not sure, but we're coming close to Bob's end here as reign of champion in summer of 83 on the cover of Wrestling Superstars. And it just goes over Bob's five great matches that he had over the years as champion. The Rings puts him on April's issue of 1983. When the going gets tough, Bob Backlund gets going. Remember that old saying? PWI Annual, Scott Backlund and Inoki on the cover, spring 1983. Wrestling Review with one of your last look at, the last look at this particular World Championship belt. Bob Backlund on the cover of July, Wrestling Review 1983. And we all know what Superstar Graham did on national television to Backlund's belt. Bob Backlund's first and only look at him on a cover of a magazine is on a Champions Past and Present Main Event issue with the new big green belt here. Some people loved it, some people hated it. I thought it looked good around the Sheik. I liked it. I mean, it's bigger. He wanted something that was bigger to stand out more, McMahon said, and that was the one they went with. This is a good issue. It's all glossy paper, color photos inside of the Past and Present Main Event. And it's also your last look of Backlund as champ. First look with him with that belt. This is an original WWF promotional photo that I got the night at one of the shows. I don't remember which one, but I just kept it. I wish I took better care of it. I mean, it looks okay when it's in the plastic, but it's been through the ringer and back. But it's a classic shot of WWF champion Bob Backlund in a photo, which hard to find those suckers, those original promos. Backlund would take on Cowboy Ron Bass, and I think this was like I said, he's on like three or four magazines total with his name on the cover, maybe just two with his Ron Bass, and this was one of them, against Bob Backlund here in November 1983. He would take a trip down to Florida and take on Bass. Madison Square Garden program announcing the death of the Grand Wizard of Wrestling. Now this is the new style, like I was saying, this is the new style program. McMahon put out his own magazine type program. The lineup sheets were stapled inside for the first couple of years, and then it went to just a piece of paper stuck inside of it for each little town that you went to. This is Madison Square Garden, Monday, November 21st, 1983. Bob Backlund will have his last successful World Wrestling Federation title defense against a masked superstar. And coverage of the match, Backlund and the Superstar, in May 1983's issue of Wrestling Scene. Last good shot of Backlund on a cover. And now we have a new champion. He would drop the title to the Iron Sheik. In these videos that I make, we talk about the rise of the wrestlers. We don't talk about the fall. So it's on a positive up note. We keep it all on the positive. And so to keep it positive, I'm going to end it with the Iron Sheik takes the title from Bob Backlund, and Backlund would continue just floundering around for a couple of different companies through the NWA, Mid-Atlantic, AWA, and then off to Japan. This is just an old photo. This is also a 1980 photo of Hogan in 1984's issue of Official Wrestling. Official Wrestling was probably the cheapest publication ever, and without a doubt, it was the cheapest, lowest budget magazine cover ever. And they're just using old recycled photos for sure. And there's an old shot of Backlund here from '81. Backlund would appear again on a throwback article on Spring of '85 Wrestling, Pro Wrestling Illustrated Annual, on the bottom with Jesse Ventura. He would make his last magazine cover going through Pro Wrestling USA's NWA, AWA joint venture for TV. Cable had just taken off. They wanted some familiar faces when they came up to the Northeast for some TV, and Backlund was one of the people. Rick Martel was another. The Samoans, Sergeant Slaughter, McMahon kind of was changing the program around, and the AWA picked up some of our fallen wrestlers from the company to their company to spread the Northeast to try to fill up some houses with some familiar faces. Backlund here on Mid-Atlantic TV. This was the Worldwide Wrestling. Backlund made an appearance taking on Cowboy Ron Bass, and he went back with a shaved head and the wrestling single, the wrestling out clothes, no longer the trunks. Had a totally different look. March of 1985. And July '85, The Wrestler, small shot, Bob Backlund versus Rick Martel, the greatest AWA match ever, some say. This is, again, July '85, Backlund, and that would be your last cover we would see Backlund for. He would reappear on a throwback shot from the 20-year anniversary issue from January '86, The Wrestler. Wrestler came out in April 1966. This is its 20-year anniversary. And it's a small shot of a recycled pic that you guys already seen the original cover for. And that would be it for Backlund until he made his reappearance again sometime in the 90s. But from there, after Pro Wrestling USA and the Crockett circuit, Backlund went to the UWF in Japan and did a series of matches in UWF Japan, which was a super stiff wrestling style. You went there and you bled the hard style. It was, these were cement matches. Guys were hitting each other hard. You were walking out of there bloodied up. It was a fine line between MMA and wrestling, even though MMA wasn't even a thing yet. Backlund would take on Nakahito Takada, the UWF heavyweight champion in 1988. This is a match of those two shaking hands at the end. Backlund was beaten and bloodied, and they had some wars there. I give Backlund a lot of credit. He didn't have to go there, and he went there and he fought hard, wrestled hard, and he competed for another couple of years there and did a great job staying in shape and kicking ass. That's a long video. That is a lot of material. Don't crucify me to the cross if I'm off a month with an issue or something. It was so hard putting this together in order because, like I said, the match may take place in January, but the issue didn't come out until like April or May of that year, and I'm trying to put them in order so you can actually see the program and the match, and then bang, here's the cover of the match happening. Like I said, not too many people could bring you that kind of information. That's what makes our channel a little bit unique, different than everybody else. I mean, I want to get to, the meat and potatoes of the whole thing. I'm not here to show my face. I'm not looking for popularity. You guys don't need to see me. You're here to see the magazine, and that's what I show you. I'm not going to give you some long, boring introduction to a show. I start right out of the gate with here it is, and this is what it is, and here's the next one. Just to keep you guys interested and keeping on the, solid material. That's why you're here, for the material. So hopefully, I made Bob Backlund shine pretty good for a good 10-year period here. If you weren't a fan of Backlund, maybe you can see him in a different light and see some of the wars that the guy had went through and a lot of the people that he put his title up against. He was there every time. He loved and respected the sport of professional wrestling, and that's a hell of a lot more than I can say for 90% of the people today or even back then. So this was the rise of Bob Backlund. We'll see you guys on the next.